Okay, so those provincial alcohol bans. Ontario has been among the most adamant that U.S. booze won't be going back on LCBO shelves, as key sectors in the province, including steel, aluminum, and the auto industry, continue to feel the pinch of tariffs. For more on all of this, I am joined now by Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethenfalvy. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Minister. I want to start by asking you about our reporting around the alcohol bans. If Prime Minister Mark Carney comes to the province of Ontario and says, we need you to lift the alcohol ban on the American alcohol booze ban, will you do it?
Well, it depends, clearly, and good to be with you, Katie. It really depends. I mean, we're fully supportive of the Prime Minister and his government to land a comprehensive deal. There's many aspects to the trade situation with the United States. Clearly, there's some that are coming into force potentially in a couple of weeks. We have the Section 232 tariffs, which are specifically impacting our auto sector here in Ontario and in Brampton, Windsor, Oshawa, Alliston, and many parts of Windsor, as I said, right across Ontario, steel companies, forest product companies. So, devil's always in the details, but we want to see a comprehensive deal because that'll provide certainty for everybody so we can move forward.
What specifically do you want to hear before you'll greenlight allowing American booze back on Ontario shelves?
Well, I don't want to get into too many hypothetical situations, but I will say this, and I was out earlier this week saying our resolve is firm to keep U.S. liquor off the shelves until we see the details of a comprehensive deal. We didn't start this trade conflict. It was in response to tariffs that were put on by the United States, including the Section 232 tariffs that I just highlighted. These are impacting day-to-day jobs in many of the communities I mentioned, impacting many people across Ontario and, of course, Canada. So we want to see that, and then, of course, we'll come to the table and give the response.
I know you're waiting for specifics, and, this is an ongoing negotiation, so things are changing. Our reporting, based on sources, industry sources who are briefed on what's going on with the negotiations, is that Canada is willing to meet some of these American demands in order to get lower 232 tariffs. Those are the sectoral tariffs on steel, aluminum, the auto sector, wood products, those kinds of things. But the Americans have made it clear those tariffs are not going to be at zero. They possibly open to being lowered, but they're never going to be at zero. Can you get to a place where Ontario is comfortable enough to get rid of the booze ban, even if there are some tariffs, if they're lowered?
Well, again, hypothetical, conditional, and I'm not at the table, so and there's many aspects to a deal. But what I will say is what everybody wants on both sides of the border. It's in both sides of our country's interest to have certainty. And if the deal makes sense, then everything's on the table. But it has to work for Canadians. It has to work for that worker in Oshawa, has to work for that worker in Brampton and Sault Ste. Marie and Hamilton. And of course, right now it's very uncertain, and I'm sure the situation is very fluid. We've always said, Katie, that we'll come to the table, but we weren't the ones that started this conflict. We have to see the details of a comprehensive deal as negotiated by the Prime Minister and his team, who have our full support.
A question about the mood in Ontario. Should the booze ban be lifted, what appetite do you think Ontario consumers have for American alcohol at this point?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know. I can't speak for all consumers. I know that we have a long history between our two countries, language, culture, families, business. We're good neighbors. We support each other. We're friends. And I think we've been that way for 250 years or centuries. So I suspect going forward, that'll still be the case. But it also is true that this has had some impact on people's behaviors. We're seeing in Ontario that many people in Ontario have gone to Ontario wines, Ontario cider, spirits, and all these great products that are produced right here in Ontario. And with our recent direct-to-consumer alcohol interprovincial free trade deal, we're now going to be able to share that right across the country and vice versa. So the dynamics have changed, and it remains to be seen if we get a comprehensive deal that we can agree to, what kind of consumption behavior we'll see out of Ontarians and Canadians.
Okay, so before I move on to the excise tax, basically, essentially, if I'm to take your words, that you kind of are in a wait-and-see moment, whether it's something that Ontario would be comfortable with, wait and see, and then you'll make a decision about the booze ban.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we didn't want to do this, but we did it in response to them hurting our workers, our families in Ontario. And so if we're responsible, that's exactly the framing and what we need to do.
Okay, I very much want to talk to you about the excise tax. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has sent a letter to the Prime Minister requesting he extend or even make permanent the federal fuel excise tax suspension that was initially implemented in April. Ford wrote, "Now is not the time to add more financial pressure on household budgets." Have you had any response from the federal government at this point?
We haven't that I'm aware of, but clearly we've been signaling for some time that we think they should extend this tax cut, as you just said, and the Premier said in his letter, now is not the time. You know, affordability is still paramount in people's minds. We acted early on the gas tax cut. We made it temporary. We extended it a number of times. And then when we saw that this was helping families, helping businesses, actually improving productivity and putting money back in the pockets of people, some $500 in the average driver's pockets is not insignificant. We would highly recommend that this is an effective way to help people at a difficult time.
If the Prime Minister does not meet the demand or the request of the Premier, does Ontario have a backup plan to try and provide some of that cost relief for the people of your province?
Well, we've stepped up already. You know, I highlighted in the budget, along with our gas tax cut, our HST cut on new homes, our small business tax cut, numerous other measures that we've put in to make life more affordable, some $12 billion in total. We acted early, consistently, and we continue to look at ways to make life more affordable and better for Ontarians. I would say this, the interprovincial trade, we've got to keep leaning into that. That is creating jobs in Canada right across the country. We got to double down on our efforts. I was pleased to see some progress in Charlottetown. I was there the week before with François-Philippe Champagne. I put on the table that Ontario would join the passport system. What is that? That was another interprovincial trade barrier that Ontario said, no, we're going to join the rest of Canada. We believe in reducing barriers. Other provinces have been calling for that for almost 20 years. We got it done. We're showing leadership in this country. Those are the types of things we should do to boost our economy and make life better for Canadians.
All right, Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethenfalvy, thank you very much for your time.